Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today for this thought from the Bible. My name's Becky. I'm a missionary serving here in this beautiful nation of Liberia in West Africa. Found a gap in between rainstorms to record, so hopefully I won't get rained on talking to you today. Now, in the last few weeks, we have been looking through the life of a character in the Bible, the prophet Elisha, found in the book of 2 Kings. And at this point in the story, this man Elisha is well established as a prophet of the people of Israel now. He is a leader of the company of prophets. He's known to kings and to commoners alike. His miracles are already the stuff of legend. He is becoming known not only as Elijah's assistant, but as a man working in the power of God in his own right. And it means life's become a little bit busy for him. We hear about him traveling around, seeing different groups of prophets working in different areas of the nation. And, I feel for him. I understand his situation, because every couple of years my husband Dave and I, we return to the UK, and part of our job is to go around to different churches and talk about the work that we're doing here and what life has been like, and traveling around the UK to do that, and it can feel a little bit exhausting. But the last time we were back earlier this year, it was actually lovely, and it was a little bit more manageable and enjoyable because we were loaned a house by our church, and it meant that we had a base, somewhere that was a little bit private, our own space. We could go out for a weekend, talk in a church, and come to this home from home. That was a lovely, refreshing place in the midst of all the busyness. And one person in Elisha's circle recognizes this very fact. This anonymous woman from Shunem. At first, when Elisha comes around, she just offers him a meal. But after he's traveled through this area a few times, she suggests this to her husband. Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed and table, a chair and lamp for him, for Elisha. Then he can stay there whenever he comes to us. Now, the Bible tells us that this woman is well-to-do. She's obviously not poor, she's quite well off, and yet she still makes a sacrifice here. She sets up a room that Elisha can call his own space, an oasis in the midst of his busy ministry. See, never ever underestimate the importance of hospitality. It might not feel like you can do very much, but you have no idea the impact that you might be having by opening your home, by giving somebody space, by giving somebody time. Hospitality is such an important skill. It's so impactful to the people who are on the receiving end of it. But anyway, Elisha is so thankful that he starts to wonder, what can I do to thank this lady? And he finds out she doesn't have a son. She has no heir. There's nobody to inherit. The family name will die out from Israel once her husband and her are no more. There's no one who will inherit the land and the possessions that they have. Also, there'll be nobody to look after her as she's growing older. We're told that her husband is getting on in years. And at this point in time, in this world, in this society, children were basically the only form of social security for a widow in her old age. She was facing a very uncertain future. But Elisha said to his servant, call her. So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. About this time next year, Elisha said, you will hold a son in your arms. See, God saw this woman's sacrifice. Without any thought of what she was going to get out of it, she was willing to help Elisha. She didn't do it for the thought of gain, but only to help this man who she recognized as a holy man of God. She even turned down Elisha's offer to speak on her behalf to the king, to maybe get her ahead in social status or anything like that. She didn't want it. And yet God saw her action and rewarded her for it in a way that she could not even have conceived. God sees what we do. He sees what we do even when it's in secret, even when nobody else notices it. And it doesn't mean that we act for what we might get out of it. But how wonderful it is to know that God does see us. He sees our deepest needs. He recognizes our deepest wants. This woman from Shunem has a son, miraculously. But the story doesn't end there. One day this boy is out in the fields with his dad, learning the trade, learning the land, and suddenly his head starts hurting and he's rushed home to his mother, and as he's lying there with her, the son dies. He dies. This miracle baby dies. Why would God let that happen? Why not supernaturally protect him? If his life was only ever gonna be short, if he was destined to die young, why did God perform that miracle of his birth in the first place? Often in the Bible, in the lives of Christians throughout history, we see that there is a bit of a pattern in how often God gives a dream or a vision or a miracle, and then something happens that causes it to collapse. Joseph had this dream as a young man, but then he ended up in slavery, a million miles away from seeing the fulfillment of it. It must have felt like that dream had died. David was anointed to be king of Israel and then ends up living in a cave, running for his life from King Saul. Dream dead. So often a God-given dream faces some sort of opposition in our lives and it seems to die. But the great news is that we can absolutely trust God with the vision that He has given us, with the dream, even if it looks completely dead. And this woman, this nameless woman in the Bible, she showed so much faith in God, even as she wrestled with her overwhelming doubts. She puts the body of her beloved son into Elisha's room. She keeps it hidden from the household, maybe thinking, maybe desperately hoping that God could do something in this situation. She trusts in God in that moment. And yet, the first thing she says to Elisha when she tracks him down is, "Did I ask you for a son, my Lord? Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes?" It is possible to have complete trust in God and yet still feel these doubts. You haven't failed if you're asking, why is this happening in my life, God? What are you doing here in this situation? Why did you start this ministry, this project, this job, whatever it may be, if it was only going to crash and burn? The question is, can you trust God in spite of those questions? This situation was absolutely horrendous and heartbreaking for this woman from Shunem, but it must also have been horrible for Elisha. Just imagine the sinking feeling in his stomach. I was involved in this. I asked God for this miracle baby for her, and now she's worse off than ever. We even hear of this moment as the woman's approaching when Elisha's like, I can see that she's distressed, but God hasn't told me why. He wasn't told why. And I'm sure that he himself, this prophet of God, must have been asking, why has this happened, God? What are you doing here? See, the first thing that a prophet Elisha does when he gets to the house is this. He reaches the house, he finds his room, there was the boy lying dead on his couch. And he went in, shut the door on the two, that's Elisha and his servant, and he prays to the Lord. Now, something interesting in the story of Elisha, up to this point, we are 7 videos in about the life of this man, and this is the first moment that we have it recorded that he prayed. Isn't that interesting? Now, clearly he did at other opportunities, and yet this is the first time that our attention is brought to it. In the other stories, Elisha just acts or explains what the Lord has said, but this time, it seems like he needed to take a moment. He needed to reconnect with God. Maybe he needed to ask that very question, why? Why is this happening? If you feel lost today, if you feel like your dream or your vision or your health or your hope for your children or your hope for your future is dead, the best place to start is with prayer. It is the absolute very best thing that you can do right now, right at this moment. Because in prayer, we remind ourselves who our great God is, the mighty one, the one who has resurrected dreams from the dead over and over and over again. And you can be honest with him. You can come as you are, doubts and all, and lay them at his feet. Elisha's prayer was answered. That boy lived again. And if there was any possibility that the birth of that boy could have been a natural event, well, I can assure you that there was no doubt this time. It was a complete miracle. This woman had seen the power of God moving in her life, and you can rest assured that her faith would have burned the brighter for it. Her son, her hope for the future, was reborn once again, and God can do the same in your life. Thank you so much for joining me for that thought from the Bible. I'll be back on Wednesday next week as we explore the next little portion of the life of this prophet Elisha. So I will see you then.